Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Kris Sims, BC Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, her website taxpayer.com. Welcome back to the show, Kris.
Thank you so much.
Kris, the Canadian federal government will finally present a budget on April 19th, the first budget, I think, in more than 2 years. What would you like to see, and what do you fear?
Hallelujah. This is a record, by the way, as long as we've gone without a federal budget. We didn't even go this long between federal budgets during the Second World War. To give you an example, the Ontario government put out a 2019 budget, a 2020 budget, and a 2021 budget since Prime Minister Trudeau put out his last one. So they've lapped them 3 times now. Here in BC, of course, we put out our budgets. Every G7 country has put out a budget, so it's well past time for them to get on this. We'll be frank, we're bracing ourselves. This is probably going to look really ugly. We know that the debt is more than $1 trillion now. It's even broken our Canadian Taxpayers Federation debt clock, that thing that we haul around the country to show people what they owe. We physically don't have the room on it anymore to show the actual debt. So we're waiting. We're really hoping that there is some plan in there to bring the country back to balance. We know it's not going to happen within 12 months. We're trying to be practical, but there should be some hard numbers in there. We want to see a lot less happy talk, and we want to see a lot more math and hard numbers and graphs and statistics showing exactly where we're getting our money from, where the revenue is coming in, and where it's going, and the plan to actually balance it and get away from deficit spending. We've had enough of this really fuzzy language being inserted into serious business documents like federal budgets. So we really hope that Minister Freeland delivers a very responsible budget.
Well, apparently she has been talking to a lot of stakeholders, like the Resource Works Society that promotes the use of Canada's natural resources, quite often in a sustained way.
Good.
To look after the country, because as we know, Ottawa, people live in Toronto, they don't understand the Canadian economy. The governments all rely on oil and gas revenue and mining revenues to balance the books. But again, will we ever see a balanced federal budget in our lifetime? That's a question a lot of people are asking. Well, and is it important?
Yeah, we do think it's important. To give you an idea, just in Ontario alone, it's easier to work with what we would call smaller numbers. To give you an idea, the Ontario deficit, what they're paying right now on their debt, the interest on their debt, is more than what they spend on post-secondary education. So yeah, even at these basement low interest rates that we have right now, those debt payments are crazy expensive. So yeah, deficits do matter, and they need to pay attention to it, because it just should send a shudder down everybody's spine to think about what happens if and when the interest rates go up. Anybody who lived through, higher interest rate times, say in the early 80s, things like that, knows what that's like. And if you start coupling that with downturns in jobs and possible more inflation and big levels of taxation, like the carbon tax jumping through the roof, things are going to get rough for a lot of people, middle-class people, working-class people, blue-collar folks. So they really need to wise up here. And if she's speaking with our resource sector, that's excellent. We hope that those talks are really serious, because just to give your listeners an idea, just on the lack of pipelines alone, from the year 2010 to the year about 2022 or so, because we didn't have full pipeline capacity, we missed out on about $13 billion with a B dollars just in lost income taxes. We're not talking royalties. We're not talking about any other fees that would have been recouped from the natural resource industry. Just in the loss of federal income taxes was $13 billion. I think you could have built, 4 or 5 hospitals for that amount.
Well, because Canada is one of the most resource-rich countries in the world, and yeah, most people admit, fossil fuels, at least in theory, are going out of style. But that's not going to happen for another perhaps 30, 40 years.
Yes.
Why not make money while you can right now?
Exactly.
And in terms of size and Canada's influence on just the climate, we're 1.2% of the world's population. We produce less than 1% of the greenhouse gases. Why should Canada always be the one that has to bend over and get whacked?
Exactly. We're always being kicked in the teeth. And to use the Prime Minister's own words, he said them en français on a very popular show called Tellement on Parle, which is a French language show in Montreal. He said this a couple of years ago. And to paraphrase, he said, even if we stopped everything right now, like everybody stopped going out of their homes, driving, eating, you live in a cave in the dark, we wouldn't make an impact on global climate. That being said, we do produce less than, between 1% and 2% or whatever it is of the emissions. And that's not including our forests, which many scientists say is a big carbon sink. But even if all of that were fair game, China and India right now are using a crazy amount of, especially in China, especially in India, animal dung and old wood pulp and things like that, very dirty forms of energy that are also very labor intensive for women, by the way, in rural areas. By making one change, by switching to clean burning natural gas, they would dramatically reduce global emissions, far and away what Canada could ever have an impact on. And guess what we're sitting on? Natural gas, produced and hauled out of the ground by workers who are paid excellent wages, who have the best human rights on Earth, and some of the best environmental rules on the planet. So if you want to help stop climate change, sell our natural gas to places like India and China. It's a win all around.
What would you like to see in the federal budget? What would help us get out of recession and keep money in our pockets?
We would like them to do a few major things. We want a serious plan, so however many years it takes, we want it mapped out to show how they're getting back to balance. We want to see them stop wasteful spending. So stop spending money on all the dumb stuff. So for example, stop paying for the lifetime expenses of former governors general. Stop paying for Harrington Lake. Sell that thing off. Stop giving pay increases to members of parliament, which they're automatically doing on April 1st. Stop giving pay increases to federal bureaucrats when all the rest of us have been taking salary cuts and hurting. Stop, for example, choking off pipelines. Start fighting for our natural resources getting to market so you get more money coming in. So stop wasting money on dumb stuff. Stop standing in the way of our natural resources and the development and getting them to market, and have a serious plan on how you're going to get the budget balanced again. Because it's not going to balance itself, as Trudeau glibly said once, and he had also promised that he was going to have it balanced by 2019. So we're not just, piling on after COVID. We know that was awful. We know that it was a big emergency and people had to do things quickly. But they can't keep spending like that. So that's equivalent to, say, God forbid, you're in a war zone and somebody is injured and you need to rush to them as a medic. You're doing, field hospital emergency work on that person. You're going as fast as you can and taking dramatic steps to save that patient's life. You don't keep doing that after you've got them back in the rehab facility a year later. It's a much more methodical, well thought out, economical approach to recovery. We need to do the same thing with this budget. We can't keep spending like crazy.
We'll have more with Kris Sims right after this.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlin, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU.
For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Kris Sims. The federal government said at some point, oh, well, we know we're in a recession. We have to recover from this. We're not planning to increase taxes. But they didn't say if they would impose new taxes. And the one I'm hearing the most about is a capital gains tax on the sale of your principal residence, something that has never happened in Canada before.
Yeah, this is serious. We started hearing about this, I would guess around a year ago. Maybe it was last summer we really started hearing the pots banging together on this. And people need to pay attention. If you're owning a house right now, or if you're hoping to eventually save up to buy your house, you need to pay attention, because the feds are seriously considering imposing capital gains taxes on the sale of your home. So I'm not talking about if you are a rich flipper or speculator and you own like 3 or 4 properties and you sell one of your houses. Those already have lots of taxes on them, including capital gains tax. Nah, we're not talking about that. So Betty saves up and buys her home. Betty pays off her mortgage year over year. She spends her money on things like paint, renovations, keeping it up, blah, 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 blah. Home ownership, the Canadian dream. Now the feds are seriously thinking about nuking Betty with a capital gains tax when she decides to sell her house. There's many problems with this. One, older folks, many of them who don't have any form of big, shiny government gold pensions, use their home, their primary residence, as the government likes to call it, primary residence, it's your home. They use their home as their nest egg. They put their money into it, they make it beautiful, that is their investment for their later years. They sell it and they move into a tiny home or an apartment or a trailer park or in with their children, something like that, and they live off that money. That keeps them afloat. They're coming for that money. On the other side of the spectrum, if you're a young couple and you've managed to, scrape by in order to even buy a townhouse in Chilliwack nowadays, because we know housing prices are crazy, especially here in the Lower Mainland. Say you're that young couple and you've got that townhouse and you saved and saved and saved and your house price has gone up, and then you sell in order to maybe buy a place with a yard for your kids. The government's coming after that money too. So they're going to try to pinch you on both sides. This is how this capital gains tax would work on paper anyway if you sell your primary residence. And what's really crazy is that I debated one of the guys from UBC who thinks that this is just a spiffy idea, and he himself even said, oh, well, this might cause housing prices to go up, and it might even reduce the number of houses on the market, thus reducing the supply. Do we think that might cause housing prices to go up? It's one of those big head scratchers. And get this, Jim, I know you love numbers and stats. They're planning, if they go through with this, UBC estimates that the feds would take about $7 billion a year from people if they had a capital gains tax. That would keep the government afloat for 3.8 days. That's the rate of spending right now. So yeah, they would hit all these homeowners with this huge tax, and they would burn through that money in less than 4 days.
Yes, I see the housing shortage it would cause, because if I'm not going to get what I feel is full market value for my home, why sell it?
Exactly.
And without that sale, the way the property ladder works, nobody has something to buy. Nobody's moving.
Perfect. It's a complete, they're looking completely, property ladder is a perfect example, perfect description. They're completely missing that. Also, if you're selling and you're in a big seller's market and it's a hot market and things are just going gangbusters and you have this tax, aren't you just going to increase your list price by the amount of tax that you're going to pay? And it makes housing more expensive.
Well, under Christy Clark, the BC government would give you a $37,000 grant to buy a home, and the price of homes went up about $37,000 overnight.
Isn't it amazing how math works? It's almost like physics, how this works. So yeah, government needs to not meddle in this. We know that houses are crazy expensive. If they want to help, they can do innovative things like the former BC Liberal, or not the former BC Liberals, but the BC Liberals during the last election. You probably remember when they floated the idea of having a PST holiday for 1 year. somehow the NDP twisted this around, and I would say the same thing if the parties are reversed. It's not a partisan thing. The NDP twisted this around into saying, oh, well, you can now buy, I think it was electric yachts or something without a PST. That's so weird. PST alone causes...
Where do you get an electric yacht?
I know, right? Like, as if that's all that PST is applicable to. Like, it's applicable to everything other than, you know, your food and your rent. So unless you're living naked in a yurt, you're paying PST in British Columbia. But with housing, building one new house typically costs you $19,000 just in PST. So if they want to make housing more affordable, drop the PST for a year, or drop all the red tape so that people aren't having to wait years in order to build housing developments. Drop the red tape and drop the taxes, get out of the way, and allow people to build more supply.
We'll have one of the crappiest stories we've heard from the Taxpayers Federation coming up when we return.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Kris Sims. Kris, is taxpayer money literally being flushed down the toilet?
Unfortunately, yes. We're trying to find out why, but more than $600,000 of taxpayers' money was flushed down the drain at Cooper's Park. And so they installed this single toilet, and it's a really schmancy toilet. It's something called the Portland Loo, and it's space age. Apparently it somehow cleans itself. I'm actually looking forward to actually seeing it to see how it actually functions. I assume steam's involved. I'm
Where's
not sure.
Cooper's Park?
Cooper's Park is just in that schmancy part right under, I think it's the Cambie Street Bridge, right? If you look over, if you're driving across it, you look over to the left, there's like a nice park down there.
Oh, so the $5 million chandelier and the $600,000 toilet near each other?
Yes, exactly. But this time, so the chandelier, I was about to blow my stack when I saw that, but that was private money, so I didn't lose my mind. But this is taxpayers' money, and it's $600,000. So they've already bought the unit itself, and it itself isn't cheap. It's around like $130,000 or something like that. But where's the other $500,000? Depending on where you are in Canada, you could usually build a couple of decent homes, like full houses including toilets inside of them for that amount of money. So we need to get to the bottom of this. And so we have filed Freedom of Information requests with the City of Vancouver to find out what's happening here.
Well, I know people complain in the Vancouver area about the lack of public toilets. SkyTrain doesn't have any public toilets. You want people to stay on the thing for an hour from end to end.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of people need to relieve themselves. Right now, you have to get off the train, use the bushes next to the station, which is most likely illegal, and then continue on.
Yes, exactly.
So why not build affordable toilets that people can use? Why blow all of your toilet budget if you had one on a $600,000 edifice?
It was a lavish lavatory for sure. This is the thing, is when I first heard about it, I'm like, we're not going to rail against public bathrooms. Like, people need to go. And for sanitary purposes, of course, we'd want to make sure that there's enough facilities around. And then we looked at the price. And when I saw the price, I envisioned, a bank of toilets. Where there's men's on one side, women on the other, hot water, all that stuff.
A shower or two?
Exactly. Even like those coin-operated showers. They have them at a lot of beaches. And so that would fine. We would not kick up a fuss. But no, it's a single throne. It's a single commode. And how they managed to spend that amount of money, we don't know. And again, we're not getting a straight answer from the city. So if something happened, say it's Cooper's Park, and it used to be on an old factory site, and based on the name of it, They probably used to make barrels there. I'm just guessing, because that's what Cooper means. So say they were digging and they were trying to connect the water line and they found, contaminated soil or something like that. Just tell us. Tell us if that's what happened, or if you had to go way far to connect to the sewer system and to the water system and it wasn't really handy. Just explain it. But you need to explain why it's $600,000. People, it isn't common sense.
The city of Vancouver's saying they're going to cut back on the police. They have already, over the past few years, cut back drastically on the fire department. There's a lot of great fire trucks just sitting in garages.
Yes, exactly. So they will cut back on first responders. I remember distinctly about a year ago or so, they were actually saying that they wanted to cut back on funding to the downtown east side, like the people who are in desperate straits, who are living in those parks. It's very miserable for those folks who live there. And they were threatening to do that, but they weren't threatening to just get rid of, how much money they blow on, public art installations. Their priorities really are screwed up. And so we really want them to really dig down and get back to basics here. People usually care about three things, and I'll use the streets as a metaphor, but it isn't supposed to be car exclusive. They want their streets to be safe. So there you go. That's police, fire, ambulance. They want their streets to be clean. So that is sanitation, garbage pickup, making sure you have public bathrooms. And they want their streets to be repaired. So fill in those potholes, make sure that everything is tickety-boo. Other than that, don't stray from your basics. And we're worried here by blowing this amount of money on this one installation in an already very expensive park rehab that they're straying from their basics.
Well, Vancouver City Council tried to convince all the other communities in the Lower Mainland to join them in a resolution that would condemn the use of oil and gas and ban oil and gas exploration. Do they understand that Canada right now not just physically runs on oil and gas, but it's one of the biggest money makers for government across the country? And whether you even have oil and gas where you live, you still get benefits from it, from the pipelines and so on running through your property.
This is what we're trying to explain to folks, is that even if you somehow bike to your organic chicken farm on a used bicycle, you still are benefiting from oil and gas, because as we explained, just from the income taxes from those oil and gas workers and resource workers alone, you're benefiting from hospitals, from bridges, from schools, all those things. That's what it pays for. Further, if you want, seriously, I'm dead serious, if you want to help the environment, sell natural gas to China and India. I made this presentation to Vancouver City Hall when they were talking about imposing mobility pricing, as if somehow that was going to save the planet. Literally, by charging people $5 to cross Clark Avenue or Burrard, that would somehow stop global warming. It's crazy. And they said, what's your solution? I said, simple. Sell lots of natural gas to China and India. You can imagine how well that went over, because it's the same crowd, as you point out, that is trying to eventually ban the use of natural gas in people's private homes. Further to that, folks, look around you. Pretty much everything around you right now is either made directly of oil, so it's a plastic or a polymer, something like that, or it was manufactured using it, or it was delivered to you using it. Just look at the example of the shipping container in the Suez Canal. So it turns sideways and blocks it, and people are panicked because more than 10% of our global trade goes through that corridor. And of course, do you think those were like solar-powered electric tugboats that pulled that thing away? Do you think it runs on solar power? Maybe someday they will. That would be great. But they don't right now. We rely on this for our way of life, for our ability to grow our food and to heat our homes. And so we really would plead with local governments to stick to those basics.
Well, Kris, what I'd like to do is go into Mayor Stuart Kennedy, or Kennedy Stewart's office. See, he loves the word Kennedy. Kennedy Stewart's office at City Hall, and say, you're against oil and gas. So can I, at this very moment, remove everything here that's connected to oil and gas? Well, the first thing I take is his cell phone.
Yep.
And by the way, they're probably against mining as well. There's 61 minerals in the typical cell phone, but it's got a plastic casing. Well, that's oil and gas. So give me your phone. Do your shoes have a rubber sole? Give me your shoes.
Yeah.
Are the shoes made out of leather? Well, those cattle grew up on a ranch. The rancher probably used a tractor that ran on diesel. So give me your shoes.
And the
you have a belt
with natural gas.
Yeah. Is that a polyester blend shirt you're wearing? Well, polyester blends are made from natural gas.
Yes.
So give me your shirt. That underwear, is that a cotton synthetic blend?
Yep.
Give me that. That chair, by the way, the very overpriced chairs, Vancouver City.
$1,600 Herman Miller chair.
Yes. That chair used metallurgical coal to make that steel frame. So give me your chair. Oh, it's got plastic wheels on it. Give me the wheels off it as well.
Yep.
And you could go through his entire office. First of all, he is naked. That office is naked. Without Canadian oil and gas, he would be a naked politician with no cell phone and no sense calling for a cab to take him home because he's banned the oil and gas to run it.
Exactly. And even if it were running on electricity, it's made
and I would dare him to go to city council now that you have stripped yourself of Canadian oil and gas.
Yeah, and this is the thing, and your description's bang on. And if more people earnestly, like with an open mind, thought about that, I think we'd have a more adult conversation about this. But it's getting to the point where you've got these...
I mean, I'm not against greener, better, less
polluting. No, me neither.
But what they're saying is stop now. Well, how do you phase it in?
Yeah.
And what about something like there's a huge percentage of our economy is dependent on oil and gas in some way. Okay, now what's your alternative to make sure that you haven't laid off 40% of the Canadian workforce? And
Exactly.
if you do, are you willing to support them, Vancouver? Are you?
Great question.
Yeah.
I would encourage anybody who, I'm with you, and I rode my bike exclusively in Ottawa. I hand sewed my baby's cloth diapers. I'm from Vancouver Island. I swam with salmon. I get it. I am a small E environmentalist, but I'm also practical. And when we see these radicals who are blocking trains, who are trying to say keep it in the ground right now, who are trying to ban oil and gas, like we've seen this silliness at Vancouver City Hall, it's really nonsense. Practical people who actually want to get things done can't have a conversation with these folks anymore. And that's where we need to find that middle ground again. We need more sensible approaches to environmental problems and good solutions. And they're not coming up with any right now. What's also unfortunate is that they will say simple things like go electric. But that's not that simple. Quite often, the same folks who are saying go electric have no idea where that electricity is going to come from. They're typically against nuclear power, even modular nuclear power, which just recycles the nuclear waste. It's much smaller now in a footprint. Quite often they're against big hydroelectricity dams. So where is this going to come from? They're against coal, obviously. A lot of electric power actually comes from natural gas plants, too. Lots of folks don't know that. So if they're against all that, where are they going to charge that car? Where does that come from? We don't have the juice for solar.
The typical electric car has 300 pounds of copper in it that are wound around the electric engines. And again, that car will have dozens of plastic parts. It needs semiconductor chips to run all that computerized stuff in it. You miss one chip, you can't build the car. You can't sell it.
That's right.
So again, if you're not developing natural resources in British Columbia, the rest of Canada, you can't build that electric car.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's
Where's the lithium for the batteries coming from? The lead, the zinc.
The lithium. Yep, for sure. They mine that stuff. And they mine it here, they mine it overseas, it's shipped here on barges. All sorts of, resources go into making energy. So we need to just, make peace with that and accept it and figure out a way to do it as clean as possible and as ethically as possible. But that's not what we're hearing typically from places like Vancouver City Hall. There's more experts, I would say, and adult and serious conversations happening at both the provincial and federal levels. Not everywhere, of course. But these sorts of strange proclamations coming out of the cities just aren't helpful. And so we really hope that they step up to the table with some real choices here.
Well, Kennedy Stewart, you can call me anytime and discuss how you're going to get by without anything made from oil and gas. By the way, I don't bother calling Vancouver City Hall anymore asking for interviews, because for 6 years every week I asked for an interview with Mayor Gregor Robertson, and his staff always said he couldn't find the time. In 6 years,
That's
he couldn't
a long
find
time
10
to not find
to
the
15.
time.
Yeah, 10 to 15 minutes. Whereas he spent nearly a year outside of Canada during his 11 years in office. So he found the time not to be here, and he missed every blizzard that hit Vancouver as well.
I'm starting to get the idea of why he couldn't find the time to call you. He didn't want to
I don't know.
answer
There's
those
always
questions.
some pop star somewhere who needs a date, no doubt. Kris, if somebody wanted to find out more about the Taxpayers Federation, where should they go?
We would love to hear from folks. We have a really cool toolkit on our website that helps you write a good letter to your MLA, to your mayor, to your MP about something that's bugging you. Because if you don't speak up, they won't know that it's bugging you. So if you can go to our website, taxpayer.com, we've got lots of resources there. And if things are concerning to you, we have tons of petitions that you can sign, including against the capital gains tax on your primary residence, stuff like that. So if you hit up our website, we would love to hear from you.
My guest has been Kris Sims, BC Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, the website taxpayer.com. If you have any questions for Kris or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter at Talk Digital Net. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.